Welcome, everybody. This is the Highlight Podcast. I'm your host, Ron Carson. And today I have with me Dr. Lakeisha Gantt, a native of Athens and the president of the Clarke County School Board of Education. Dr. Gantt has been a steady and inspiring voice in equity, student success, and community engagement here in Athens. With a background, in leadership and counseling, education, she's spent years advocating for the needs of our students and families, especially those whose voices often go unheard. In this episode, we'll talk about her journey from growing up right here in Athens to leading one of the most important institutions in our community, the challenges facing public education today, and how we can all play a role in supporting our schools and students. So let's get to it.
Okay.
This is Highlight, and today's spotlight is on you, Dr. Gantt.
All right. Thank
Thanks.
you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I really wanted to start off the conversation because I feel like to know where you are now, we kind of have to start back where you started, where you come from, your roots. And so, as a native, born and raised, just tell us about you. What side of Athens you're from, and kind of how you grew up here.
Okay. I am, as you mentioned, a native Athenian. I grew up here on the west side of town. So Athens is very small anyway. And so typically it's like east side, west side. Um, I went to a variety of different places for school, like earlier in my life, but I went to Parkview Play School, which is still Parkview, but it's no longer a play school. Before that, I think if my memory's serving me, and because I'm going by what people have told me, I don't remember when I was 2. But I also attended the Maddox Center. And then from there, at some point, let's see, Parkview Play School, and then Oglethorpe, Clark Middle BHL, some in some order, and then Clark Central High School. And so, yeah, most of my time has been spent here, minus the years that I spent in college. I was the first person in my family to graduate from college. And so, in many ways, college was a new experience for me. I did not really know. I knew that I wanted to go into psychology, or at least I thought I did, and a variety of other areas I was curious about, but I did not know how to get there. Um, and neither did I make the decision to go to school until my senior year. Like, I didn't enter high school knowing that this is where I'm going and this is how I'm going to get there. And so, in many ways, my experiences here in Athens have been pretty significant in shaping me because at each point in my life, it has always been someone or some group or organization or mentor or some institution that has been a critical part of my decision making. And so, yeah, I decided to go to Mercer University, and from there came back home for a little while after I graduated. And then I've been here every, pretty much every year since then.
Mm-hmm. So, in seeing that, how have you seen Athens change over the years from when you grew up to now? What are some of the bigger? We're not a small college town anymore, so
No,
what stands out to you?
that's a difficult question because Athens has been like different things at different times in my life, but there is still some familiarity. Like, there are still some similarities across the times that I've been here. Um, Athens has always felt very small, and that's been sort of a good feeling for the most part. There are sometimes there can be some, disadvantages to a town feeling small, but it's always felt small, meaning like I have not felt too far removed often from
What's
the
going on?
community or what's going on, or it's not uncommon to find out that, oh, I know someone that knows this person, or this person is related to this person.
Right.
And so there In my recollection, I just don't, it just hasn't felt like there have been a lot of degrees of separation between the communities. And so to me, that is something that is still there, but the dynamics have shifted a little bit in that, yes, it's still small. And we still feel that, we sort of know people that know, I know someone
Feel
that
like
knows you or,
right.
but, but it feels a bit more separated. I don't know if that makes
No,
sense.
it definitely does. I mean, growing up here, going to, a Prince Avenue and then going into the school district, you see polar opposite sides.
Mm-hmm.
With your background in psychology, how do you see those separations in the sense of how some people are growing up versus, other people? Because we're so close together, but a lot of people can live different lives,
Mm-hmm.
have different upcomings. So,
Yeah, I feel that there is the ties that bind us together have sort of, I won't say stop binding us together, but there, to me, in the community seems to be less and less that's tying us together. You know, people live like separate, individualistic lives, and perhaps that's always been the case. But if I am comparing it to what I feel like I'm used to, I felt that there was always sort of this support system around families, support systems in general. Um, People were connected in ways it was not abnormal to call for help, with someone or, an organization. And now it feels a bit more like people are, I mean, maybe we were all trying to get by at that time as well, but I was a child and I was a teenager. And there are some things many things you look at very differently depending on where you are in that developmental spectrum. But
right.
um, yeah, I just feel that now people, our community seems to be less close unless there's a tragedy or unless there's like some big issue
Or,
or unless there's some big disagreement.
right.
Um,
Allocation.
yes, or allocation. But like being close for the sake of like connecting with each other, bearing one another's burdens, um, like empowering each other, that seems to have changed.
Hmm. Speaking of doing it all, your campaign. You're running for mayor.
Yes.
You have a group of, I feel like, people that have been with you this time that you've been in politics.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So what made you guys want to take it a step up from just being in the president of the Board of Education to now the mayor of Athens?
Yeah, so that's a pretty important question, and it's one that I have reflected on a lot. I have enjoyed my work with the board. I don't know if you know this, but before I ever got into schools and when I left graduate school, I knew I always wanted to be community centered. And so at that time I was trying to choose between like teaching or going back into the community. And so always knew I wanted to do community work. And so I had decided that I really wanted to be in schools. And so when the opportunity came for me to, you know, have a job in a school, um, thanks to whoever, I don't know, all of the people that made that happen, I got an opportunity to work with children who were falling between the cracks. And that really verified that I was where I needed to be. Sort of school is like this really neat intersection between the family and the community. And so, but I had a suspicion before I started working in schools, but when I got there, it always felt like something else was impacting schools more than the people that were in it, or just as much. And so I became interested in like continued my interest, like in just like sort of understanding how research applied to the settings, but also like what were some things that impacted schools. And at that time, I was working with discipline. Um, I was working on school climate and working with leaders, teachers, and students
Mm.
on ways to improve school climate. And
What were some of the ways that y'all
it
did
was,
that?
well, so it was a variety of different ways that we attempted to. Some of it was through systemic changes, such as more of tiered discipline practices and sort of having a standard way that we address discipline across the school, but also being sure that we provided the professional development that was needed, not just for teachers, but for leaders, as well as drivers, like all, the people that are interacting with students, but then working with the students as well. So it's like the team that I was a part of, we address various aspects of the system.
Right.
And so, and we saw from there that there were discipline disparities. In other words, like um, Black students were disciplined more than their peers, even when you compared it or adjusted it for representation.
Mm.
And so that just really, and I've always been, I don't know, I've always been interested in, advocacy work anyway, before I ever got in schools.
Mm-hmm.
And so that became a significant focus, is how do we actually equip people to impact the culture? And part of that is through helping them understand how to manage behavior, but also what we bring as
Right.
adults,
Right.
to situations. And then working with kids to help them understand what they bring as
Right.
well.
Right.
So this is something that all of us have responsibility to fix, leaders as well. But also, I became aware, or even maybe more aware, that there were some policy implications. In other words, when I said, like, there are some things that impact schools that are outside of the school.
Mm.
So I knew I wanted to do more. And at that time, I wanted to be able to work with policy to help create better guardrails and systems that schools operated within and that students operated within. So I decided to run for the Board of Education. One of the three areas of focus for the for board members in general is to set policy, in addition to managing the superintendent and setting the budget.
Right. I want to go back to the discipline part.
Okay.
Because recently, and I know it's probably within the last 4 months or so, I believe a student brought a weapon to school.
Mm.
And, I saw a lot of back and forth banter online,
Okay.
about the situation. And I think in some cases when we talk about how do we address discipline, it's like a child making a mistake, having that professional development tools available, but then it's also like, how can I put it? That shouldn't ruin or change the rest of his life,
Sure. Sure.
And I'm curious of your perspective, because I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I want to understand how in that situation, how did you view, how that could be helped? Because it's a cry in some ways, but it's also like
Sure.
a lifestyle for some of them,
Mhm.
So how do you view that?
So I should probably say, before I even go down this path, that
Sure.
how I view behaviors of children can be very different, and sometimes it's not popular. Um, Now, I do recognize that there are consequences. There are things called natural consequences. And there are some things that when you do something at school, there's going to have to be this particular response, right? Um, if you bring a weapon, or if you bring a weapon and make a threat. In my mind, I think that in these situations, it's very important to have a very strong threat assessment team to assess the risk. Not just there's a weapon, kicked out of school forever. That person is still a part of our community. So that's that. But also administrators, on the other hand, have to, their job is to keep schools safe. And, we've we've had some very just unfortunate examples of, um, situations that have happened at school with weapons. And so it's not something that they can, administrators can take lightly either. And I should say, I'm not speaking on behalf of the school
Of
board.
course.
Let me say that,
Right.
or,
Right.
our superintendent or teachers or schools.
Right.
I'm speaking from my personal and my professional experience. And students, students are children, and we forget that their frontal lobes are not developed. I don't care what type of decisions they're making. They can be making the best decisions or the worst decisions. It's true that with development, people will make bad choices. There will be consequences for those choices. So that's not what I'm advocating for. But what my approach is, how do we both decrease the likelihood of this behavior happening again and take advantage of this situation in a way that we can strengthen that student, where we can empower that student, where we can provide any type of emotional and behavioral support so that across time, the positive behavior is sustained. Behavior is purposeful. And so we do it because of something. And so if we're not addressing the something, then you suspend the child. Okay, the something is there. They're in our community, and before you know it, that behavior turns into something else.
Right.
And so your question about like wanting, asking me what would I do, it has to be a multi-pronged approach. And we cannot expect to change the behavior of children. We can't punish our way out of changing like deeply disturbing behavior. I know we want to think we can, but it is just not really sustainable. And so we have to have a sort of a holistic approach. Yes, how do we stop the behavior? But then how do we start to work underneath those layers
Right.
to improve the chances of this not happening again?
Right. Do want to take a moment to reflect uh recent tragedy with AJ. Sending my condolences to his family. And it's just things that are continuing to shape our community and especially our youth and,
Sure.
and how they see some of these things.
Sure.
I think the response in some of those cases helps them understand what you're saying, that hey, we all are a unit, and
Yeah. And I should say, yeah, definitely my condolences, to the Jewel Brown family.
right.
Such a tragic, tragic loss. And it's through these times, like your original question, not just this time, but you and I've been in Athens for
Right.
many, many years. So, you know, part of what led me here to run for mayor, which was your question, is like, well, I was in the schools and it's like, oh, there's more to this. We need to have policy. Then it's like, there's more to this. Children and schools are, they're a reflection of the communities that they are part of. And if we truly want children to be better, yes, it's about what we do at home, it's about what we do at school, but it's also about what happens in the communities in which they live. And so I don't believe that you can want children and families to thrive without wanting the communities that they're a part of to thrive. And what that means is that we have to advocate. No, we're not going to fix all of these problems. It may be in our lifetime, but small steps at a time to slowly change our communities so that the conditions that parents exist in, the conditions that kids exist in, and the conditions and communities in which schools exist in are more conducive to growth and healthy behavior. And so that, to me, is a significant part of the job of the mayor and commission, is to ask the question of how do we actually work to create better conditions for some of our most vulnerable populations.
I definitely I want to jump into another part of this. You have what, it's 3 years now as the president of the board?
I should probably remember. I can't remember. I think it was like 3.5, maybe, but I'm no longer the president of the board.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Um,
transitioned out of that role last January.
can you talk a little bit about the mayoral debate that took place last Saturday, and how you kind of, what was that experience like? Have you done debates before? And will you come back here to do a debate? That's the next question.
So, have I done debates before? Not formal debates. I mean, I've debated before, you know. Um, but so no, that was my first time doing a debate with candidates. I've done forums before
Right.
and I have debated before, but I have not debated as a candidate. I don't know if that answers your
No, no,
question.
no, it does. It does.
Um, and yes, I would be willing to come back here for another debate. I've spent some time reflecting, and I think there are always areas that I can improve. Um, I have so many ideas, and so there's so much I want to share about like the things that I think are important, and have a really good team, and we'll sharing aspects of that. And so 60 seconds to answer questions is difficult,
Right.
but I also know that sometimes it's needed. Sometimes it's needed. But I also think we have to be realistic in what we expect of not just candidates, but like leaders and families. And it's the same expectations we put on everyone else. We have to understand that the most important thing that your governance team can be, or a few important things, among the most important things, are being thoughtful. Okay? I don't want anyone who is going to solve any problem in 60 seconds unless my life like depends on it in that moment. That person or your governance team should be able to be thoughtful, but also with a sense of urgency. And so the urgency was there and some of the thoughtfulness, but having to compile or compact those answers into 60 seconds or a minute and a half, that was a little bit challenging. Um,
How do you feel about the responses from your other opponents?
I think they were okay. I think they were reflective. And I have not asked them this. I don't know that there was enough time to really get into all of our platform. I know I didn't. I've talked a good bit about housing and then small businesses at the end,
Right.
but I didn't really go into small businesses. We have a disparity study that like lays the groundwork for how we can impact minority-owned and women-owned businesses. And so that's a passion of mine. That's something that I will be prioritizing. And there, a couple of other areas, and I feel that my observation is that that may have been the case with other candidates. I have not asked them, so I don't mean to
Right.
speak on their
Right.
behalf.
Well, I want to dig more into your platform, right?
Okay.
You're talking about small businesses, and we'll skip to it because I'm pretty sure you've been paying attention to the past, mayor and commission meetings,
Mhm.
the PD for the Vine Street Plaza.
Mhm.
What's your perspective on that? I'm definitely curious.
Oh, well, I don't know that we have enough time to
Okay.
talk about
Okay.
my perspectives, but I will say this. Um, there, it is very important that when we are working to solve problems, that we unify. And that sounds so cliche. It sounds so, and it also sounds
It's the
very
reality.
simple,
Yeah.
but unless we organize and unify around one thing at a time, doesn't mean that it has to take long, then I think it moves us further as a collective body, like if we're talking about like our African American community. Um, I think it's important for people to be able to sit across from each other and talk, but I also think it's important to be able to acknowledge any type of pain and harm or what have you that has happened before. And oftentimes politics does not it's not welcoming of that. right? When you mentioned like an example maybe earlier, but it was about a different situation where there was a lot online.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're not going to solve some of these problems that we have online and on Facebook. And that is just the
Be opposite.
reality. It is the true reality. And until we understand that, yes, we have to have the urgency, but we got to put the work in. And change is hard. It's hard. An organizational change is hard. Individual change is hard. If you think of the things that, I want to do, and I'm like, oh gosh, I know I need to improve in this area. Well, if it was that easy, then we would all be walking around like fully evolved people.
Right.
So I just think that we need to spend more time talking with each other and building our capacity really to do that very uncomfortable work. And it is very uncomfortable when you have to sit, you have to argue, you have to say things that maybe, you have to tell
Right.
your
Some people.
pain. Yeah. You have to put yourself in a vulnerable situation. And then you have to figure out what's the next step towards a solution. And I don't think that we do that well. And I will say that particularly in our African American community, because of a lot of different things. Like it's not like we just got here. There are a lot of things that have happened in our history that we have internalized. And that internalization it impacts how we relate to each other and how we even trust each other and where we confuse the fight,
Right.
And so there's so much work to be done, but we got to build our capacity to really be able to solve some of these problems and try something and then try something else, and then try something else. It's like the most vulnerable populations and the problems that we have in the communities that need us, they really depend on that. And that takes us being in a healthier place.
Communication,
Hmm.
definitely. Um, One of the main tasks of being mayor, is to manage and propose budgets.
Yep.
And I feel like you have pretty decent experience with that.
Yeah.
I remember you were telling me you were reading. I forgot the laws, the book that
Yeah.
you
Probably
got.
it could have been our budget,
Yeah.
like maybe one of our budget notebooks or.
Right. How do you plan to take that experience into your campaign, your platform, and what we currently are working with in the budget?
Yeah, I think in many ways it's pretty similar. Like when you look at the mayor's like role and then the president's role, it is to present or to support the presenting of a budget that we think will pass. So ultimately that's the goal, to pass a budget. And not just to pass a budget, but also to be stewards of the resources we have and to be sure that budget is reflective of the mission that we have to accomplish, right? And then, but also like the needs of the individuals of the organization. And so I see that role as paralleling, like, looking at, okay, what do we need? What are some of the priorities we have be it with housing? Um, what are some of the goals that we have with our minority and women owned businesses? Where does it fit already in our current budget? Where might it fit? What might be some changes that we may need to make? For instance, we have I think now it's called maybe the Office of Belonging. I think it's
Hmm.
changed, right? I should know this. It's changed.
I
I
should
think
know this
one,
too, but
yeah, it's changed. I'm pretty sure it's changed, but figuring out like where does this fit? And then also asking people in departments and things like that to prioritize what is needed, but also prioritize what is needed,
yeah.
like not just, I'm sorry,
No, you're good.
but not just saying like, well, we can spend it because it's there.
Right.
How does it align with the strategic direction that we're going in? And then at that point, I feel like you at least have more of a rationale to say, this is the strategic direction. This is the goal. Housing is the goal. Small businesses, that's the goal. Community uplift or programs, this is the goal. And it can't just be one thing that I really think is missing with some of the debate. So maybe this is something to
Mm,
keep in mind is that as a mayor, yes, you're the leader of that governance team, but it's not just about your ideas. Yes, we need to have an idea and we need to have a platform because we want to be able to really unify that governance team around that. But our governance team, they also represent their districts. And I expect them to have intimate expertise on what is needed in those districts related to that platform. So it can't just be, you can't have a leader that is just so top down that this is the way it's going to go. One, practically, it can't go that way. The mayor does not vote typically, unless it's special
Right.
circumstances or
It's a
there's a,
tie or something like that.
yeah, and so a lot of this transfers because it's the work that I've done with the Board of Education. A lot of it is around how do you build effective working relationships with leaders and with colleagues and with your community, and how do you it's a sort of a beautiful tension. How do you represent limited funds?
I was about to
Because
say it's a lot of tension up there.
yeah, it is.
I'm thinking you have the former auditor, you have uh the former
Oh, you mean
operations.
like tension of within
Yeah,
the, oh, okay,
I'm just
okay.
saying, there's definitely a level of tension with the commission, and so it's going into that. I mean, yeah, you're gonna need to have those relationships
Yeah.
with city council members. What are is there anything in the budget that you're like, I see this and I want to change that as mayor? Uh,
I think there are some things. There are some things, but um the most change has to come from also people being on board, right? And so if we're saying, okay, we really want to partner, let's just say we really want to be sure that our partner organizations are strengthened, right? Or that we are really, helping to the degree that's possible our organizations that are serving our elderly populations, right?
mhm.
Which is a vulnerable population here that is often forgotten about. We have to, as a mayor, and not just a mayor, but who that city manager has to be able to get other people on board with that,
Right.
you know? Or if we're saying, yeah, we want to really strengthen our youth programs, like I believe that young people need jobs. I really do. I believe that they need jobs that are like well paying, that gives them something to do, either related to their interests or particularly during times of like during idle times, the summer,
Mm.
programming and jobs. Um,
Because in Atlanta they have programs like night basketball,
yeah,
things like that.
yeah,
And I actually know that there are some kids that actually work and volunteer, and they run the
yeah,
program
yeah,
year round,
yeah,
even though it's only during a certain amount of time of the year.
yeah. And so we need to be looking at, and these aren't even creative ways. We used to have the Grand Slam a
I
long time
remember that.
ago,
Yeah.
and maybe it needs to look different now, and maybe it needs to be paired with something. But children, when they make choices, they're not making choices. I haven't met a child yet or a parent. I haven't met a parent yet that has said, I'm going to raise my sweet baby girl or baby boy to, I'm going to like train them to break laws, or I'm going to train them to join a, like
Yeah.
gang, or
Yeah.
yeah, like, no, some of, these things they're a result of a variety of different things, but we have to fill that time with meaningful things, but we also have to give, kids and adults actually a way to survive.
Right.
And so, but your question, when it can't just be me, that has to be something that, technically a budget can be presented, but that has to be something that majority of the commissioners agree with and
Right.
they feel strongly about as well.
Right. Um, Obviously, a major issue in Athens is soaring housing costs. One of your promises is to make housing as sustainable for families as it is for students. How do you specifically plan to fulfill that promise?
Well, it's a priority. Okay, it's a priority. And there are a few different things when we talk about housing as a large category. Um, there's a housing affordability, right? Being able to actually access a place to live, a safe place to, go to sleep and wake up. But there's an issue with people who have places to live and have homes, but are worried that they won't be able to stay in those homes because of increasing costs of a variety of different things, but taxes included. And then we have, the issue of people being unhoused. And so all of that really sort of falls, under this large housing category. I will tell you one thing is that I do believe that we have to identify what we're going to do, like what we're going to prioritize. Doesn't mean that we can't, that all of those can't be important. But one of the things that happens in government is that we start we'll say, okay, well, we want to do this. And we'll say, well, what about, and then, okay, we're going to do, well, what about this? But we didn't talk about this. And then it's, well, what about this? And before you know it, we have 20 problems that we're trying to solve, which is it's wonderful. It's ambitious, and it slows us down because government is also slow just by nature. And so we have to do the hard job of saying, we're going to do this first, but we have this and then this, right? This is it's in our view. Okay. It's in our periphery. We haven't forgotten about it, but we're going to do this one thing first. And one thing I think is important is being able to build affordable communities. That is just something where, I don't think that we're going to be able to address the number of people that need access to affordable housing so that they won't be in a place where they can't afford their taxes, or they won't be in a place where they're having to sleep in their cars or sleep in a place that's not designed for people to sleep in. But I think that, to me, now, one affordable community, will that solve the problem? No, but it's a step. And what we do not have are steps right now.
Right.
We have a lot of ideas and a lot of reports, a lot of findings, but we don't have a step. We need to take a step and say, we're going to try this, and then we're going to try this, and then we're going to try this.
Right. Outside of housing, what about crime? How do you feel, as mayor, you have to kind of set up that budget, Yeah. Have you talked to Chief?
I have not spoken with Chief Salters.
Yeah.
I have not spoken with him. I was actually at an event that he was at recently, actually Saturday, where he provided a brief overview and mentioned that crime is down, and it has been for the past few years. But that doesn't mean that, we're not at a zero, and
right.
and is,
things still happen.
Yeah, things are still happening, but overall, crime is down. But that doesn't mean that we don't want to actually improve just sort of the quality, of our communities. And there may be things happening that have not, they haven't went to the level of maybe a police being called. So, it may still be being committed. Maybe it's lower level crimes.
The things that I think, because we're so small, because in Atlanta, I think that's a very common thing. Like, Atlanta's so big, there are things that don't go directly to 911. But I feel like in Athens, because we're so small, you could hear the tack hit the ground. Like, it's a lot of things. Like, for example, there was a shooting downtown. I think there were kids that were actually involved in that. And then recently we just spoke about with AJ and it's just, we hear the pin drop here a lot louder. So how do you, because I think you did say, crime is, or you said that the chief said crime is down.
Yeah.
But how do we address that from the non-traditional way?
Well, I think some of the things that we've talked about are key. People commit crimes for reasons. And figuring out what some of those reasons are. We know, and I'm not saying that this is the only reason. So because there's a very fine line between how people interpret this. But what I am saying is a lot of individuals that find themselves incarcerated are a lot of them. I'm not saying all of them, and I'm not saying this is a reason. I'm just saying this is a correlation. Okay. So it does not imply causation, but a lot of there is no small number of people that find themselves incarcerated that have mental health issues. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There are also some other correlates with being involved with the criminal justice system that starts in schools, how we actually resolve infractions in schools, the involvement of law enforcement and how law enforcement may be involved. A person might, especially if it's a young person, they may start committing crime out of necessity, or at least in their mind is necessity.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of it is trying to get at some of the root contributors to the crime. I will tell you that, I generally don't believe that we can arrest our way out of crime.
Right.
Because if we could, when you look at like just overall these past many decades and the number of people that we have incarcerated, if we could arrest our way out of crime, we would have evolved. We would have no crime now.
Right.
We lead the way with incarceration. So, I don't know if that may distinguish me from someone, and I don't even know if I won't even say distinguish, because I mean, this may not be,
Right.
someone may look at this as a weakness. I don't know, but I believe in being honest, and I'm not a person that believes we can arrest our way out of crime, because you take the same conditions in the same community, then guess what? Someone else rises to that occasion,
Right.
because the community is still doing what the community does. It's still creating and influencing and shaping the behaviors. And so I believe that we have to we have to try our best. Perfection is not expected, but we have to try our best to address some of those underlying contributing factors. And I do believe if we can focus in on our young people, if we can, obviously advocate, people say, yeah, we need jobs here. We do need jobs, but we also need jobs that pay people. People cannot, I mean, if I got to have 3 jobs, and I'm just going to
Right.
be real. If I got to have 3 jobs and my husband has to have 2, and I'm just giving this as an example. I
Right.
don't want to be misleading, but like
Right.
if you have a family or a couple and they have,
Mm-hmm.
one person has 3 jobs, the other one has 2. But then I'm a bad parent when I don't show up at the school or when I'm gone,
Right.
but I should be teaching my child all of these things. But then remember, the ties that bind have sort of loosened,
Right. Right.
and, there are no supports.
Yeah.
So yes, we need, children need jobs, and like families need like relief. You have families that are trying to, and single parents that are working 2 and 3 jobs, but they may also be caring for a loved one. Then they have 2 children. Then they're having to rob Peter to pay Paul because, rent is going up.
Right.
And then,
It's like
they're
something's
caught.
going to give.
Yes, they are caught. And so I'm getting ready to get on a tangent right now. And I know that's not what you asked.
No, look, it's okay. It's
But-
okay. I want your insight though.
But
There are people that need to understand this part of this.
nothing irks me more than, well, there are some things that irk me more, but it irks me when people look at families and they make judgments on, well, the parent should have just did this, or the mom, and it's like, if it were that simple, you are aware that we wouldn't need therapists. We would not need jails. And I mean, that's a whole different story about
nother
whether we need
conversation, but
jails.
you're right,
Okay,
yeah.
so but like, come on. We have
It's not that simple.
It's not
The answer's not that
simple. And if it's not that simple for us to figure out, it certainly is not that simple for a 13-year-old child to figure out, and for their parent or parents to figure out. So we have to work to create better conditions for families in Athens. And what that means is that we have to ask some hard things. We may have to give up some things here or there. You asked about criminal justice and crime. We got to start looking underneath. A significant part of our budget currently goes to criminal justice.
Yeah. A lot of it.
And so if criminal justice was the answer, we would already be there. We
We would
wouldn't
have
be
better
still asking
results.
the, my point exactly. And so we're going to have to also look at these other ways that we can start addressing some of the contributing factors. And I believe that is this the answer? No. But I believe that if we can look at programs for children and families, and if we can look at helping our elderly, okay, I really do believe that there is something there. And if we can advocate for and I'm not saying jobs. I've heard someone say, well, we have a whole lot of jobs. Okay, well, show them to me. So when I see someone that's looking for a job, I want to be able to pair them with you, and I want you to help walk them through this process to find a well-paying job.
Right.
I'm not
Because
talking about
apparently
a
they're in their shoes. They know how to get there.
yes. And if we have them and you're in a position to get them,
Hmm.
then link that person to them.
Right.
But I think we like to tell ourselves these things and it's like, okay, well, yeah, we have jobs and all these different things. Or we also tell ourselves, well, yeah, the parents or whoever, people just need to work. Well, we don't have an unemployment rate issue. So people are working.
Right.
They're working themselves like to where they have no other capacity to be able
Happily.
to take care of the other things that are also important. So I'm sorry.
Right.
Okay, I'm
No,
coming
no,
back.
no. It's good. It's all good. I wanted you to get it all out because I feel like all those things are what you like embodied in your campaign, if I'm not mistaken. Um, is there anything else about your campaign that you want to tell us about? We will have you back for the debates after everyone qualifies and
Yeah.
whatnot.
Yeah.
But is there anything that you want people to know about or where they can, find you and hear more about what you're doing?
Yeah, so you can find me at Lakeisha for Athens. We also have our very first town hall, and I don't know that I'm not sure when this will be shared, but we have our first town hall coming up this Sunday. We also have a listening session that following week at Uppercuts Barbershop. And we just ask that you come out. We're going to be talking, or the community comes out. We're going to be talking about some of our platform areas, but we also want to engage around those platform areas. I don't pretend that I know everything. Okay. And so I will also say, I've shared this on another podcast, is that our campaign has three goals. One is to get me elected as mayor, and to also get people involved that are not typically involved in governance, to empower them, and then to connect them to a movement, which is our campaign, to help them get involved in their governance. But then, thirdly, in the event that I'm not elected, okay, I want people to have ready made actions that they can take around these platform items so that they can take it to whoever's on the commission, whoever the mayor and commission are, and say, okay, so we can build an affordable community here. And we can also have tiny homes here. And we can actually we can increase the number of minority and women owned businesses that are contracted with our city if we have this here in this office. I want them to have ready made actions that they can advocate for. And so those are the three goals of the campaign. Um, there is sort of an educational piece with that second goal because sometimes communities are not really aware of how they can get involved or what to do. And so we're embedding that in what we're doing as well. And yeah, just, if you want to know what we're doing, reach out, look at Lakeisha for Athens. Those are the two things that we have going on in November. In December, we're going to have an evening at the practice on the east side where I can speak to middle and high schoolers about some of their priorities because this is our future. And so those are some of the things that we have going. If you want to volunteer, if people want to volunteer, we ask them to reach out at Lakeisha for Athens. If they want to donate, we love donations. We encourage them to donate as well. And just most importantly, spread the word.
Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Dr. Kent, for
Thank you for
coming
having me.
by. We look forward to having you back soon, and we'll see you on the next highlight. Thank you.